The morning mist hung heavy over Windsor Castle as Catherine, Princess of Wales, stood at the large window of her private study. Her fingers traced the cold glass while she watched the grounds below come alive with activity. Royal staff moved with quiet efficiency, preparing for what would be one of the most difficult days in recent royal history. 3 weeks earlier, Prince William had received the call that would change everything. His military regiment needed him for a special mission overseas, one that could last several months. The details were classified, but Catherine knew enough to understand the gravity of the situation. This wasn't a ceremonial duty or a brief diplomatic visit. This was real, dangerous work that would take her husband far from home for an uncertain period. The couple had faced separations before during their courtship and early marriage, but this felt different. They now had 3 young children who depended on both parents, and the weight of royal responsibilities had only grown heavier with time. Catherine had built her life around the partnership she shared with William, both personally and professionally. The thought of carrying on alone, even temporarily, felt overwhelming. In the days following the announcement, Kensington Palace had been unusually quiet. The usual stream of official engagements continued, but there was a subdued atmosphere that even the youngest staff members could sense. Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis had been told about their father's upcoming departure in gentle terms, but they didn't fully grasp what months apart would mean. Catherine found herself memorizing small moments with new intensity. The way William hummed while making morning tea, his laugh when Louis told silly jokes at dinner, the comfortable silence they shared while reading together in the evening. She began to understand how military families everywhere must feel when facing deployment, though she rarely spoke about these private thoughts. The media attention had been relentless. Every public appearance was scrutinized for signs of distress or tension between the couple. Royal correspondents speculated about the impact on Catherine's solo royal duties and whether this separation might signal deeper changes in the monarchy's future. The pressure to maintain a composed public face while processing private emotions had become exhausting. William, meanwhile, threw himself into preparation with characteristic determination. He spent long hours at military headquarters, attending briefings and training sessions. His sense of duty had always been strong, inherited from generations of royals who understood that service sometimes required personal sacrifice. Yet Catherine could see the conflict in his eyes during quiet moments at home. One evening, as they tucked the children into bed together, Charlotte had asked why her father seemed sad lately. William knelt beside her small bed and explained that sometimes grown-ups had important work to do, even when it meant being away from the people they loved most. His voice caught slightly on the words, and Catherine felt her own throat tighten with emotion. The royal household staff, many of whom had served the family for years, went about their duties with extra care during these weeks. They understood that this farewell would be particularly difficult, not just for the immediate family, but for the entire institution they served. Private secretaries worked overtime to coordinate schedules and ensure that Catherine would have additional support during William's absence. Queen Elizabeth, in her final years, had spoken often about duty and sacrifice. Her words seemed to echo through the halls of Windsor as the family prepared for this separation. The late Queen had endured her own wartime separations from Prince Philip, and her strength during those times had become part of royal legend. Catherine drew comfort from these stories, even as she struggled with her own emotions. The children's reactions varied with their ages and personalities. George, as the eldest, seemed to sense the gravity of the situation without fully understanding it. He became more clingy with both parents and asked frequent questions about when his father would return. Charlotte approached the news with her typical directness, announcing to her nanny that she would help take care of everyone while Papa was away. Little Louis, still very young, continued his normal routines, but seemed confused by the unusual atmosphere in their home. Royal protection officers briefed Catherine on the enhanced security measures that would be in place during William's absence. Though she would maintain her full schedule of public engagements, there would be additional protocols to ensure the family's safety. These conversations served as stark reminders of the unique challenges facing royal families, even in peaceful times. As the departure date approached, Catherine found herself torn between wanting to savor every remaining moment and wishing the goodbye could happen quickly to end the anticipation. She had always been someone who faced challenges head-on, but this situation required a different kind of strength. The waiting felt almost harder than the separation itself would be. The evening before William's departure, they walked together through the gardens of their Kensington Palace home. The late autumn air was crisp, and fallen leaves crunched beneath their feet. They spoke about practical matters, the children's schedules, upcoming royal engagements, and all the mundane details that would continue in his absence. But underneath these conversations lay deeper currents of love, worry, and determination to support each other through whatever lay ahead. The departure day arrived with unseasonably warm November weather, as if nature itself was trying to provide some comfort during this difficult time. Catherine woke before dawn, unable to sleep through the night for the third time that week. She found William already awake in the chair by their bedroom window, dressed in his military uniform and staring out at the London skyline. They moved through their morning routine with careful normalcy, sharing breakfast with the children and helping them get ready for school. Catherine had insisted that George and Charlotte maintain their regular schedules on this day, believing that routine would provide stability during an emotionally charged time. Louis, too young for formal education, would spend the morning with his nanny before joining his parents for the farewell. The official departure was scheduled for late morning from a private airfield outside London. However, the family's real goodbye would happen at home, away from cameras and public scrutiny. Catherine had specifically requested this privacy, understanding that some moments were too personal to share with the world, even for a family that lived much of their lives in the public eye. As the children finished their breakfast, William pulled each of them aside for individual conversations. He knelt down to George's level and spoke quietly about being the man of the house, though he was careful not to place too much responsibility on his young son's shoulders. With Charlotte, he shared special words about taking care of her mother and little brother, knowing that his daughter's nurturing nature would shine during his absence. Louis, barely understanding what was happening, received extra hugs and promises that Papa would return with presents. The drive to school that morning was quieter than usual. Catherine sat in the back seat between George and Charlotte, holding their hands while William drove. They passed familiar London landmarks, and Catherine found herself wondering how many more months would pass before they would all be together for this simple school run again. At the school gates, William lingered longer than usual. He hugged each child tightly, whispered words of love and encouragement, and promised to call them every day that his mission allowed. Other parents and teachers respectfully maintained their distance, though Catherine could sense their sympathetic glances. The school community had always been supportive of the royal family's desire for normalcy, and today that support felt especially meaningful. After dropping off the older children, the family returned to Kensington Palace for the final preparations. William's military kit had been packed for days, but he spent time double-checking everything while Catherine fed Louis his mid-morning snack. The toddler seemed to sense the unusual atmosphere and stayed closer to his parents than normal, occasionally looking around as if searching for something he couldn't quite identify. Members of William's military unit arrived to escort him to the airfield. Catherine had met several of these men before at official functions, and their respectful but warm demeanor provided some comfort. These were people who understood the weight of duty and the cost of service, and their presence reminded her that William would be among trusted colleagues. The final hour at home passed both too quickly and too slowly. Catherine and William found themselves having the same conversations they had already had multiple times, as if repetition could somehow make the separation easier. They reviewed contact schedules, discussed backup plans for emergencies, and went over the children's upcoming activities. These practical details provided a framework for emotions that felt too large to express directly. When the time came to leave for the airfield, Catherine made a decision that surprised even herself. She asked to accompany William for the final goodbye, bringing Louis with her. This wasn't part of the official protocol, but she felt strongly that their farewell should happen face-to-face, not through a phone call from home. The drive to the airfield was conducted in official vehicles with police escort, a reminder of the public nature of their private grief. Catherine held Louis on her lap, while William sat beside them, his hand covering hers throughout the journey. They spoke little, but the silence felt companionable rather than awkward. Sometimes words were inadequate for the depth of feeling between them. At the airfield, Catherine was struck by the efficiency and professionalism of the military personnel preparing for departure. Everyone moved with purpose, yet there was an underlying gentleness in how they handled this family moment. Several officers approached William for final briefings, while Catherine stood nearby with Louis, who was fascinated by the large aircraft and bustling activity. The actual goodbye happened beside the plane, with only essential personnel nearby. Catherine had wondered how she would handle this moment, whether tears would come or if her royal training would keep her composed. In the event, she felt surprisingly calm. This was simply something that had to be done, and she would do it with as much grace as she could manage. William held her for a long time, neither of them speaking. She could feel his heartbeat through his uniform and smell the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with the crisp autumn air. Louis babbled happily in her arms, oblivious to the significance of the moment, and his innocent chatter provided a sweet counterpoint to the intensity of adult emotion. When they finally separated, William's eyes were bright with unshed tears, but his voice was steady as he made his final promises. He would be careful, he would call whenever possible, and he would think of them every day. Catherine found her own voice to tell him how proud she was, how much she loved him, and how strong she would be while he was away. The moment when William walked away toward the aircraft was the hardest. Catherine watched his familiar figure grow smaller as he moved across the tarmac, and she understood viscerally what military families experienced during deployments. The mixture of pride, fear, love, and loneliness that washed over her felt both personal and universal. As the plane taxied for takeoff, Catherine stood with Louis in her arms, waving at windows she couldn't see through. Other families in similar situations had told her that this moment would be burned into her memory forever, and she already knew they were right. The sound of jet engines would always remind her of this day, this goodbye, this leap of faith into an uncertain future. The flight back to London felt longer than the journey out, though it covered the same distance. Catherine found herself already missing William acutely, even as she began mentally organizing the responsibilities she would now carry alone. Louis fell asleep in her arms during the drive, and she was grateful for his warm weight and peaceful breathing. The weeks following William's departure revealed the true depth of the bond between Catherine and the British people. What began as a private family separation gradually became a shared national experience. As the public watched their future queen navigate single parenthood while maintaining her royal duties with remarkable grace and determination. Catherine's first solo public engagement after the farewell took place at a children's hospital in Birmingham. The staff and families there had followed the royal family's story in the media, and their warm reception provided unexpected comfort. One young patient recovering from surgery asked Catherine if she missed her husband. Her honest answer that she missed him very much, but was proud of his important work, resonated far beyond the hospital walls when the interaction was later reported. The children adapted to their father's absence in ways that both surprised and touched Catherine. George became more protective of his younger siblings, often checking on Charlotte and Louis before bedtime and asking his mother if there was anything he could do to help. Charlotte channeled her energy into school projects about military families, interviewing palace staff whose relatives served overseas. Louis, too young to fully understand the situation, seemed to sense the change in household dynamics and became more affectionate with his mother. Video calls with William became the highlight of each day, though coordinating them across time zones and mission schedules proved challenging. When connections were possible, the family gathered around Catherine's computer for precious minutes of shared conversation. William looked tired but determined in these calls, and Catherine learned to read the subtle signs that indicated whether his day had been particularly difficult or dangerous. The media coverage of Catherine's solo appearances took on a different tone as weeks passed. Initial speculation about her ability to handle increased responsibilities gave way to admiration for her composure and effectiveness. Royal correspondents noted how she seemed to connect more personally with people she met, perhaps drawing on her own experience of worry and separation to relate to others facing challenges. Behind the scenes, Catherine developed new routines to manage the increased demands on her time and emotional energy. She began each day with early morning exercise, finding that physical activity helped clear her mind before the day's responsibilities began. Evening calls to close friends and family members provided emotional support and connection to life beyond royal duties. The palace staff rallied around Catherine in ways that demonstrated the deep loyalty and affection she had earned over years of respectful leadership. Her private secretary took on additional scheduling responsibilities while the children's nanny adjusted her hours to provide extra support during particularly busy periods. Even senior household staff found small ways to ease Catherine's daily burden, from ensuring her favorite tea was always available to quietly handling logistics that might otherwise require her attention. Public reactions to the separation touched Catherine deeply. Letters arrived daily from military families sharing their own experiences and offering encouragement. School children sent drawings and cards wishing Prince William safe travels. Community groups organized charitable activities in honor of the royal family's sacrifice, raising funds for military support organizations and veteran services. One particularly moving encounter occurred during a visit to a military base in Scotland. Catherine met wives and families of deployed servicemen and women and found herself in conversations that felt more like support group meetings than official royal visits. These women understood exactly what she was experiencing, and their practical advice about managing loneliness, maintaining connections, and staying strong for children proved invaluable. The first major royal event Catherine attended alone was a state banquet for visiting dignitaries. Protocol required her to host alongside other senior royals. But William's empty chair beside her felt symbolic of the larger absence in her life. Yet she navigated the evening with such skill and warmth that guests later commented on her natural diplomatic abilities and gracious hosting. As autumn turned to winter, Catherine established new traditions to help the children cope with their father's absence. They created a large calendar marking off days until his expected return, with special activities planned for difficult moments. Family movie nights on Fridays featured films William had mentioned wanting to see, making him feel included despite the distance. The children also helped Catherine record video messages to send to their father, sharing school achievements, funny stories, and expressions of love. The approaching Christmas season brought both challenges and opportunities for creative problem-solving. Catherine worked with William's military commanders to arrange a special video call on Christmas morning, despite the complex logistics involved. She also coordinated with extended family members to ensure the children would feel surrounded by love during the holiday season. International attention on Catherine's handling of the separation led to unexpected diplomatic opportunities. She received invitations to speak about military family support at international conferences and to meet with leaders of organizations supporting deployed personnel. These engagements allowed her to channel her personal experience into meaningful advocacy work. The most touching moment came when Catherine received word that William's mission was proceeding successfully and that a preliminary return date had been established. She shared the news first with the children during their usual bedtime story session, watching their faces light up with joy and relief. George immediately began planning activities for his father's return, while Charlotte announced she had been saving her best drawings to share with Papa. The announcement of William's expected return date created national celebration that surprised even seasoned royal observers. Social media filled with messages of support and congratulation for the family's handling of their separation. Local communities began planning welcome home celebrations, and military support organizations reported increased interest in their programs. Catherine's final solo engagement before William's return was particularly poignant. Speaking at a gathering of military families, she reflected on the lessons learned during their months apart. She spoke about discovering inner strength she didn't know she possessed, about the importance of community support during difficult times, and about the deep respect she had developed for families who face such separations regularly. As the plane carrying William home appeared in British airspace, Catherine waited at the same airfield where they had said goodbye months earlier. This time, all 3 children were with her, bouncing with excitement and clutching handmade welcome signs. The reunion that followed, captured by a single official photographer, became one of the most beloved images in modern royal history. The embrace between William and Catherine lasted long enough for observers to understand the depth of emotion involved in both their separation and reunion. When William lifted Louis high in the air and knelt to hug George and Charlotte, the joy on all their faces reflected the relief and love of a family made whole again. In the days that followed, Catherine often reflected on the period of separation as one of the most challenging and growth-inducing experiences of her adult life. She had discovered capabilities she didn't know she possessed and had formed deeper connections with people facing similar challenges. The experience had also strengthened her appreciation for the partnership she shared with William and for the support systems that sustained royal families through personal and professional challenges. The story of their farewell and reunion became part of royal legend, not because it was unique in the history of duty and service, but because it demonstrated the very human emotions behind public roles. Catherine's grace during separation and joy at reunion reminded the nation that even those born to serve could face personal struggles with dignity while drawing strength from love, duty, and community support.